Introduction. Introduction. Imagine a universe born not from chaos, but from a single divine melody, a song so powerful it shapes oceans, mountains, stars, and the destiny of every living soul. The Silmarillion is not simply a story, it is the creation of meaning itself. The birth of light, darkness, rebellion, courage, and the eternal battle between hope and despair. It reveals the roots of Tolkien's world long before The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, showing how one music shaped everything that would ever be. In this 15-chapter retelling, each chapter will carry a strong hook, a powerful flow, firm argumentally clarity, and emotional connectivity, turning myth into a living heartbeat. This is the story of how the world began, not quietly, but through music, conflict, and the unbreakable desire for light. Enjoyed the video? Subscribe to our channel, eat a like, share it with friends, and leave a comment. Chapter 1. The Music of the Fëanor. Before the first moment of time, before light or darkness existed, there was only Ilvatar, the one dwelling in a realm beyond form or limit. This place had no sky, no earth, no stars, only a vast, profound silence, not empty, but filled with the possibility of all things that could ever be. Into this silence Ilvatar brought forth the Fëanor, mighty spirits born from his thought. Each spirit reflected a different part of Ilvatar's mind. Wisdom, courage, harmony, curiosity, justice, and fire. The Fëanor listened to his voice, and understanding grew within them like light awakening a sleeping world. As their knowledge deepened, Ilvatar revealed to them the purpose for which they had been made. He gathered them and spoke. Behold, I will show you themes of music, and in playing them, you shall declare your understanding of me. The Fëanor felt a magnificent stirring within their spirits. The idea of music, divine, limitless, full of meaning, ignited their desire to create. And so the great music began. At first it was soft, a single rising line like the first colors of dawn slowly breaking a silent horizon. Then more voices joined, blending, layering, strengthening the melody. Soon the music expanded into a symphony wide as eternity itself. Each Fëanor added their own patterns, shimmering notes like starlight, deep tones like mountains, flowing harmonies like rivers yet unborn. They were not simply singing, they were shaping the very blueprint of existence. The music moved with perfect unity, weaving beauty beyond imagination. But among the Fëanor was Melkor, the most powerful of them all. His mind reached further than the rest, his curiosity burned brighter, and his desire for creation was fierce. He wandered often in the emptiness beyond Ilvatar's presence, searching for places where he might shape something of his own. In these wanderings a hunger grew within him, not just to create, but to rule, to dominate, to bend the music to his own vision. So when the great music rose to its peak, Melkor introduced his own melody. It was proud, bold, and sharp. At first, it added a dramatic contrast, like a storm rising on a clear sea. But soon his notes grew harsh and violent, clashing with the harmony around him. Discord spread through the music like cracks, spreading across a perfect mirror. The Fëanor faltered. Their harmonies shook, twisting under Melkor's force. Many became confused, uncertain, overwhelmed. Yet Ilvatar did not silence him. Instead, he introduced a second theme, deep, gentle, filled with sorrow and unbroken hope. It flowed around Melkor's discord, absorbing it, transforming it, shaping beauty from rebellion. Melkor raged against this new harmony, intensifying his chaos, trying to drown the theme in noise and turmoil. Then Ilvatar rose again and revealed a third theme, strong, majestic, and unstoppable. It echoed with triumph, justice, and the unbreakable truth that no darkness could overcome the light that Ilvatar had chosen to exist. This theme overwhelmed all discord, not by force alone, but by revealing its own higher destiny. The music reached heights so magnificent that the Fëanor trembled in awe. When the final note faded, Ilvatar let silence fall. Not a silence of emptiness, but of completion. Then he showed them a vision, the world that their music had shaped. They saw a vast sphere, suspended in the void Arda. The world, seas rolled under starlit skies. Mountains rose like frozen waves, forests moved like whispers of wind, and valleys glowed with the promise of life. They saw ages of joy and sorrow, peace and war, triumph and tragedy, all woven from the themes they had sung. They saw, too, the children of Ilvatar, the elves, eldest and fairest, awakening under starlight, and men who carried a strange power within them, the freedom to shape their own fate beyond even the music. The Ainur were filled with wonder, for they had sung these beings into the world without knowing how great their destinies would be. But Melkor looked upon the world with envy and desire. The vision magnified his longing to rule, to conquer, to possess. He wanted to shape the world, not according to Ilvatar's will, but according to his own. Then Ilvatar spoke. "This world shall now be." With that, the vision became reality. Those Ainur, who wished to enter the world and shape its physical form, could descend into Arda. But once they entered, they would be bound by time, unable to leave until the world was complete. Many of the greatest Ainur chose to go. Among them were Manwë, Lord of the Winds, and the spirit closest to Ilvatar's heart. Olmo, Master of Waters, whose voice echoed in every stream and ocean. Ola, the great smith, who longed to shape the bones of the earth. And Varda, Lady of the Stars, whose light would burn away many shadows. These became the Valar, guardians and shapers of the young world. Melkor descended too, but not to protect. He arrived like a burning flame, tearing the sky, shaking the foundations of the new world. Wherever he went, ice melted, mountains cracked, oceans boiled. The Valar began their work of shaping Arda, but Melkor fought them at every step. If they raised mountains, he destroyed them. If they dug valleys, if they lit the world with new stars, he tried to darken them. The shaping of Arda became a battle. Creation against destruction, harmony against chaos. Yet through this struggle the world gained depth. Mountains rose where the Valar strengthened their defenses. Deep chasms formed where Melkor wounded the land. Rivers sprang from places where fire met water, and islands rose from the sea through conflict and healing. The world became richer, more dramatic, more alive because of the clash of wills. Still, Melkor remained the greatest threat to the world's peace. His shadow spread like a stain across the new creation, twisting beasts, poisoning waters, corrupting the very air. The Valar gathered together, knowing the children of Ilvatar would one day awaken beings delicate yet powerful, fragile yet capable of immense greatness. They vowed to protect them, to preserve the world's beauty despite Melkor's malice. In the end, the first age of creation closed on a powerful truth. The world had been shaped by both harmony and rebellion, by light that refused to fade and darkness that sought to dominate. And above all, the music of Ilvatar still echoed within every stone, river, star, and heartbeat. Thus the story of Arda begins not with war, but with a song, a divine melody that created both beauty and conflict, reminding us that even the greatest shadow exists only because light first chose to shine. Chapter 2. The Shaping of Arda. The vision had become reality. The world of the Ainur had first glimpsed in music, now unfolded before them in raw, unsaped, form a glowing sphere, suspended in the vast emptiness, filled with shifting fires, restless sayas and mountains rising and collapsing in endless motion. It was beautiful, fragile, wild, and incomplete, a world waiting for hands that could calm its chaos and give it meaning. Into this newborn realm the greatest of the Ainur descended, clothed in forms that reflected their power. The moment they entered Arda, they felt a new weight settle upon them. The weight of time. No longer were they boundless spirits living outside of beginning and end. Now they walked inside a living world, whose changes could affect them, shape them, and even exhaust them. Yet this new limitation only deepened their purpose. Their first task was monumental, to bring order to the young world and prepare it for the children of Elf. At the center of this work stood three powers, known as the greatest among the Valar, Fëanor, Lord of the Winds, and closest to Ilvatar's heart, took command of the shaping of the skies. Olmo, the solitary master of waters, moved through the deep places of the world, shaping rivers, seas, and hidden springs. Ola, the great smith, worked with fire and stone to form the foundations of the earth. Each had a unique purpose, and each was essential to the world's balance. But there was another presence in the world, one whose desire for domination overshadowed all creation. Melkor, the mightiest of the Aenir, had entered Arda with overwhelming force. His spirit burned like a falling star ripping through the sky, and the world trembled beneath his arrival. He had no intention of helping the Valar shape the world according to Elvatar's design. Instead, he sought to claim Arda for himself, to bend every mountain, river, and valley to his will. From the moment of his entry, the shaping of Arda became a struggle. When Mano lifted the winds to clear the dark mists, Melkor brought storms so violent they tore the skies. When Umo carved deep oceans and filled the world with flowing water, Melkor stirred them into whirlpools and tempests. When Ola raised the first great mountains, Melkor shattered their peaks with fire and frost. Creation became conflict. Harmony became resistance. Yet despite Melkor's constant interference, the Valar did not abandon their work. Their unity gave them strength. Whenever Melkor broke what they built, they rebuilt it with even greater purpose. They discovered a truth woven into the music. Even destruction could not undo Elvidaris' design. Every act of rebellion only created new possibilities. Deeper valleys, stronger mountains, grander seas. The world gained beauty precisely because it had endured struggle. Among the Valar, none felt the weight of Melkor's corruption more deeply than Yavanna, the giver of fruits. She was the spirit of all growing things, the mother of forests and fields, whose heart beat in rhythm with every seed that would ever break through the soil. She longed for a world filled with green life, peaceful and fertile, untouched by shadow. But Melkor's fires scorched the land she nurtured. He froze the fields she warmed. Where she planted the first small forests, he unleashed storms that uprooted them. Still, she did not despair. With patience like the growth of an ancient tree, she continued her work. She called upon Ola, her husband, to shape the deep places of the earth in such a way that her forests might take root and flourish someday. And though Melkor fought against them both, their creations endured silent promises of life that would one day bloom. Meanwhile, Varda, Lady of the Stars, brought light into the dark sky. She gathered the purest energies of creation and set them in the heavens as brilliant stars. Each star was a beacon of hope, a reminder that Melkor's darkness would never fully reign. When she lit the skies, Melkor fled her presence, for her light wounded him more deeply than any blow of battle. The other Valar rejoiced, for now the world had a sky that shimmered with promise, a sky that foretold the coming of the firstborn, the Elves. Still, the world was not safe. Melkor built vast strongholds in the deepest north, fortresses of shadow and ice, where he gathered followers of lesser spirits he had corrupted. Tesi spirits, once Braimaya, now twisted under his influence, and became servants of darkness. Through them, Melkor extended his reach, spreading fear across the young earth. To counter him, the Valar created a mighty dwelling of their own, Almaran, an island in a great lake at the center of Arda. From here they governed the shaping of the world with wisdom and unity. Under Mano's leadership they established order. The winds found their paths, the seas their depths, the mountains their places of rest. Then Ola, with the help of the Valar, constructed the two lamps, towering pillars of unimaginable height. Upon each he set a radiant flame. The lamp in the north was Eluin, and the lamp in the south was Or. Together they bathed the world in golden light, creating its first days and nights. Under this light, Yavanna's seeds began to grow. Valleys softened, plains stretched wide, and the first forests whispered with the breath of life. The world entered its first spring. But Melkor watched from afar, and jealousy burned within him. The beautiful world under the lamps was not shaped by his will. He could not bear to see harmony flourish. So, Estruk, with overwhelming force, he attacked the lamps, shattering their foundations. The great pillars fell, flames scattering across the earth like falling suns. Mountains cracked, seas overflowed, and the world was reshaped in violent chaos. Ulmaran was destroyed, and the Valar mourned, for it had been their first home. In the darkness that followed, Melkor strengthened his power. He built a new fortress in the far north, filling it with creatures twisted by his hatred, spirits of fire and ice, shadows that crawled through the cracks of the earth, and monstrous forms shaped by his malice. The world trembled under his growing might. Yet the Valar did not surrender. They withdrew to the far west, to a land they shaped into a hidden sanctuary called Aman, the Blessed Realm. Here, beyond Melkor Estrich, they built Valinor, a realm of peace, light, and harmony. And there, in defiance of Melkor's destruction, Yavanna created the greatest of all. Living things, the two trees, Telperion and Lorelin, whose silver and golden lights would restore hope and guide the future of the world. The shaping of Arda was not finished, but its pattern had been set. Darkness would rise, light would answer, and the children of Elvatar, sleeping, would awaken into a world defined by the struggle between shadow and hope. Thus ends Chapter 2, a chapter of creation under conflict, of beauty born from resistance, and of the first great war between harmony and rebellion. Chapter 3. The weight of responsibility. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind roaring in your ears, and knowing that one step forward could save 100 lives or destroy them. This is what responsibility feels like for anyone who chooses to lead. It is not a crown of gold, but a weight made of expectations, trust, and consequences. Leadership may begin with a voice, but responsibility begins with the courage to accept what that voice demands. In this chapter, we explore why responsibility is the silent engine of leadership, how it shapes character, and why no great leader can exist without carrying its full weight. Responsibility is not assigned, it is embraced. Many people wait for the world, their teachers, or their circumstances to give them a role. But true leaders step forward before they are called. They understand that responsibility is less about authority and more about accountability. When a leader accepts responsibility, they are essentially saying, the outcome of this journey, good or bad, begins with me. This mindset separates those who command from those who inspire. It transforms ordinary individuals into anchors of stability, especially when everything around them begins to shake. To understand the power of responsibility, imagine a team facing a difficult decision. Everyone has ideas, but no one wants to commit. If the decision fails, no one wants the blame. If it succeeds, everyone wants the credit. In moments like these, responsibility is the difference between chaos and clarity. A responsible leader steps forward not because they want praise, but because they want progress. They understand that decisions must be made, risks must be weighed, and outcomes must be owned. Leadership thrives on responsibility because responsibility turns choices into commitments. The greatest challenge of responsibility is that it demands consistency. A leader cannot choose to be responsible on good days and disappear on difficult ones. Consider a captain of a ship. If they abandon the wheel during a storm, their earlier moments of control mean nothing. Responsibility requires a leader to show up even when they are tired, uncertain, or afraid. This continuous presence builds trust, the cornerstone of any team. People follow leaders not because they are perfect, but because they remain steady when others cannot. Responsibility is that steadying force. Responsibility also teaches humility. While strength gives a leader courage and vision gives them direction, humility gives them wisdom. A responsible leader does not pretend to know everything. Instead, they listen, observe, and learn. They admit mistakes rather than hiding them. This honesty creates room for improvement, growth, and innovation. A leader who hides behind pride will crumble under pressure, but a leader grounded in responsibility will use pressure to refine their purpose. Humility and responsibility walk hand in hand, shaping leaders into individuals who serve rather than dominate. Another key dimension of responsibility is foresight, the ability to consider the consequences of decisions before making them. Many people react impulsively, driven by emotion or convenience. But a responsible leader pauses to evaluate, what impact will this have on my team? Will this strengthen us or weaken us? What will this choice mean tomorrow, next month, or next year? This reflective thinking is not a sign of hesitation. It is a sign of respect. Respect for the people they lead, the mission they pursue, and the values they protect. Responsibility turns impulsive choices into purposeful decisions. Responsibility also demands emotional discipline. A leader is constantly observed. Their words, their actions, their tone, even their silence. They must control their frustration, manage their fear, and handle their excitement with balance. A responsible leader does not let their emotions lead the team. They let their principles lead their emotions. This emotional strength helps maintain harmony and stability, especially in environments where panic can spread quickly. When a leader remains grounded, others gain confidence. Responsibility is not only about actions, it is also about emotional control. One of the most difficult aspects of responsibility is dealing with failure. Every leader, no matter how skilled, will face setbacks. Projects collapse, plans misfire, relationships strain, and expectations fall short. A poor leader blames others or makes excuses. A responsible leader accepts the failure, studies it, and transforms it into a stepping stone. They turn embarrassment into education. They do not escape responsibility. They expand from it. This ability to turn failures into lessons inspires followers more deeply than success ever could. Responsibility also shapes the culture of a team. When leaders demonstrate responsibility, their team learns to do the same. People mirror the standards set before them. If the leader is careless, the team becomes careless. If the leader avoids accountability, the team avoids accountability. But if the leader takes responsibility with strength and dignity, the team learns to take ownership of their roles. Over time, the culture shifts from blame to collaboration, from fear to trust, from hesitation to initiative. Responsibility does not just shape leaders, it shapes environments. Consider an example: a group project where one member consistently takes the lead, organizes tasks, and ensures deadlines are met. Even if they are not officially the leader, their sense of responsibility makes them the natural leader. People gravitate toward those who are dependable. Responsibility creates influence, even without authority. Eventually, the entire group performs better because one person's commitment raises the standard for everyone else. This is the unseen ripple effect of responsibility. It inspires excellence beyond the individual. In moments of crisis, responsibility becomes even more essential. When confusion rises, people look for someone who remains calm and decisive. A responsible leader does not have all the answers, but they take the first step. They provide direction, even if the path is uncertain. They lift others rather than waiting to be lifted. This courage under pressure becomes a source of strength for the entire team. Responsibility turns fear into action and uncertainty into progress. Ultimately, responsibility is the heart of leadership because it transforms intention into reality. Anyone can dream, plan, or speak beautifully about ideas, but only responsible leaders turn those ideas into actions. They do the difficult work, make the tough choices, and accept the consequences. Responsibility is not glamorous. It is demanding. Yet it is also deeply rewarding because it builds respect, trust, and legacy. The three things every great leader leaves behind. As we move toward the next chapter, remember T's leadership is not proven by how loudly you speak, but by how deeply you carry the weight of your commitments. Responsibility may feel heavy at first, but with practice, it becomes the backbone of strength. Leaders are not defined by the titles they hold, but by the burdens they are willing to bear for the sake of others. In the journey ahead, responsibility will not only shape your decisions, it will shape your identity as a leader. Chapter 4. The Art of Communication. What if I told you that the difference between a confused crowd and a united team is often just one clear sentence? Communication is not merely the act of speaking. It is the art of turning thoughts into direction, emotion into motivation, and uncertainty into clarity. Without communication, even the strongest vision collapses. With it, even an ordinary idea becomes powerful enough to move people. In this chapter, we explore why communication is the lifeline of leadership, how it shapes trust, and why every great leader is first a great communicator. Communication begins not with the mouth, but with the mind. Before a leader speaks, they think, they organize their thoughts, clarify their purpose, and choose words that will empower rather than confuse. A leader who speaks without clarity creates noise. A leader who speaks with intention creates direction. This distinction is vital because communication is not measured by how much one says, but by how much the listener understands. Leaders who master this principle turn every conversation into progress. One of the greatest strengths of effective communication is simplicity. Many people believe that using complicated language makes them sound intelligent, but true leaders understand the power of clarity. When they speak, their message is like a clean river, flowing smoothly, easy to follow, refreshing to the listener's mind. They avoid unnecessary jargon and focus on what matters. This simplicity does not weaken the message. It strengthens it. It ensures that every member of the team, regardless of skill level, can understand the goal and contribute to it. Communication also depends heavily on tone. Words may carry information, but tone carries emotion, and emotion decides how that information is received. A leader may speak the right words, but if the tone is harsh, careless, or impatient, the message is lost. A calm tone inspires confidence. A respectful tone builds trust. A warm tone encourages openness. Leaders understand that tone is like the glue that holds communication together. Without it, words fall apart, misunderstood, and misplaced. Listening is another cornerstone of communication. Many people believe that leadership means speaking more than others, but the truth is the opposite. The best leaders listen deeply. They listen not only to the words being spoken, but also to the feelings behind them. They listen to concerns, ideas, doubts, and suggestions with an open mind. This listening builds connection, and connection strengthens teamwork. When people feel heard, they feel valued. And when people feel valued, they work with greater dedication. Listening turns communication into collaboration. Leaders also understand that communication is not one size. Different situations require different approaches. For example, a crisis demands quick, decisive communication. A planning session requires thoughtful, strategic communication. A conflict requires calm, empathetic communication. A celebration requires uplifting, appreciative communication. Great leaders adjust their communication style based on the needs of the moment. This flexibility ensures that their message always lands effectively. Nonverbal communication plays a powerful role as well. Sometimes, a leader's silence says more than their words. Their posture, eye contact, facial expressions, and gestures all communicate messages. A confident posture inspires trust. A genuine smile builds connection. Eye contact signals respect. Even how a leader stands or moves can affect the morale of a room. Leaders are constantly communicating, even when they are not speaking. This awareness helps them remain intentional in every moment. Another essential aspect of communication is transparency. People follow leaders they can trust, and trust grows from honesty. A transparent leader communicates openly about plans, challenges, and changes. They share information clearly so that the team is never left in confusion, even when the truth is difficult. Transparent communication shows courage and integrity. It prevents rumors and builds unity. When a leader communicates honestly, their words become reliable, and reliability is the foundation of loyalty. Communication also shapes culture. A leader who communicates with respect creates a culture of respect. A leader who communicates with enthusiasm creates a culture of energy. A leader who communicates with negativity creates a culture of fear. Every word a leader says contributes to the atmosphere around them. Over time, these words become habits, and habits become culture. Leaders must choose their words wisely, because their team will mirror the tone they set. Conflict is another area where communication becomes vital. No team, no matter how skilled or united, is free from disagreements. But conflict is not the enemy. Poor communication is. Leaders do not avoid conflict. They navigate it with clarity and calmness. They ensure that every party feels heard. They guide conversations away from blame and toward resolution. They turn tension into understanding and frustration into cooperation. Communication transforms conflict from a threat into an opportunity for growth. Motivation also depends heavily on communication. People are more likely to give their best when their leader communicates vision with passion and purpose. A leader who says, "We must do this," gives instructions. A leader who says, "Together we can achieve this," gives inspiration. Communication shifts people from obligation to motivation. When leaders share stories, examples, and encouragement, they awaken something deeper in the hearts of their followers, the desire to strive for excellence. Clarity is another key pillar. A team cannot deliver results if they do not understand the goal. Leaders ensure that expectations are clear, roles are defined, and instructions are specific. They avoid vague language that leads to confusion. Instead, they communicate with focus and precision. This clarity saves time, reduces mistakes, and keeps everyone aligned. It turns scattered efforts into unified direction. Communication also includes feedback, both giving and receiving it. Leaders offer constructive feedback that helps others grow rather than discourages them. They focus on improvement rather than criticism. They also accept feedback with humility, viewing it as an opportunity to evolve. This exchange of feedback strengthens relationships and builds a culture of continuous improvement. It teaches everyone that communication is not about perfection, but progression. Inspiring communication requires vision. Leaders speak not only about what is happening now, but also about what can happen in the future. They paint a picture of possibilities. They ignite hope and direction. They communicate potential in a way that helps others see beyond their limitations. Visionary communication transforms ordinary moments into meaningful journeys. It gives people something to strive for, something to believe in, and something worth working toward. Ultimately, communication is the heartbeat of leadership. It connects people, aligns goals, and fuels action. Without communication, leadership is silent. But with communication, leadership becomes powerful, purposeful, and transformative. Leaders who master communication do more than speak. They inspire, guide, heal, and unite. Their words become bridges that connect minds and catalysts that move hearts. As we step into the next chapter, remember this: leadership is not measured by how loudly you speak, but by how clearly you connect. Communication is not just an ability, it is a responsibility. Leaders who communicate with clarity, empathy, and intention do more than lead teams. They build communities, and in the journey ahead, your voice, shaped with purpose and delivered with integrity, will become one of your most powerful tools. Chapter 5 of Eldamar and the Princes of the Eldulu. Imagine a moment when the world is young, the stars shine brighter than memory, and an entire people stands at the edge of an ocean they have never crossed, choosing whether to follow a dream or stay behind. This is the chapter where the destiny of the elves separates, forming paths that will shape all the ages to come. After the long journey across Middle-earth, the elves finally reached the western shores. The sea lay before them like a silver mirror, calm yet endless, whispering of lands beyond sight. Here, the Valar prepared a special region for the elves, the Elvenhome, a land of peace and unbroken light on the eastern shores of Aman. But not all elves moved as one. The three great hosts, Vanyar, Noldor, and Teleri, each followed their hearts in different ways. The Vanya, led by Ingo, were the first to cross. Their spirits were gentle and devoted to the light. They loved the Valar dearly and wished to live closest to the Blessed Realm. Their passage across the sea was swift, and once they reached Aman, they never returned. The Noldor, led by Finwë, came next. They were curious, skilled, and eager to learn the deeper mysteries of creation. The Valar welcomed them warmly, teaching them the arts of craft, lore, language, and song. In Eldamar they built Tirion, a white city upon a green hill, glowing under the radiance of the two trees. Here the seeds of greatness were planted, seeds that would later grow into triumph and tragedy. The Teleri, the largest and gentlest host, were the slowest. They loved the starlit shores of Middle-earth, and found it difficult to leave. Many lingered, and some never crossed the sea at all. Those who finally completed the journey were guided by the Maya, who taught them the music of waves and the secrets of the sea. Because of this, the Teleri became the greatest mariners among the elves. When they reached Aman, they settled on the shores, building the shining haven of El Kalandu, the haven of the swans, with ships crafted like pale white blossoms floating on the water. Though the three tribes were separated in their ways, their hearts were still connected. The Vanyar lived closest to the light, the Noldor lived between shadow and radiance, and the Teleri lived near the sea, listening to the call of the outer lands. Together they formed one people in the Blessed Realm, the High Elves. In this chapter, the princes of each tribe rise into the story. Ingo, the High King of all elves, wise beyond measure. Finwu, the noble king of the Noldor, father of Fëanor. Elwu, Thingol, and Olwu, the leaders of the Teleri, whose choices shaped both Aman and Middle. And in Tirion, under the mingling lights of Lorelin and Telperion, Finwë's house grew. Here was born Fëanor, the greatest craftsman of all the elves, brilliant, fierce, unmatched, whose creation of the Silmarils would later set the world on fire. Eldamar became a land of beauty and learning. Its streets shimmered with crystal lamps. Its towers glowed like stars. The elves sang songs that flowed like light, and the Valar rejoiced to see their chosen children flourish. But beneath this beauty, a quiet tension began to stir, a sense of destiny gathering strength. The choices made in this peaceful land would one day shape wars, exiles, and the very fate of the world. This chapter marks the moment before the storm, the age of innocence that came before the great tragedy of the soul. Chapter 6. The Weight of Responsibility. What if every decision you made today shaped not only your own future, but the future of everyone who follows you? This is the hidden truth of responsibility, the invisible force that separates a leader from the crowd. Responsibility is not glamorous. It does not sparkle like wealth, it does not roar like power, and it does not shout for attention. Yet it carries a weight heavier than any crown. The moment a person accepts responsibility, they rise into true leadership, and the world begins to trust their steps. Responsibility begins with ownership. A leader does not wait for someone else to fix a problem, explain a mistake, or take initiative. They step forward and say, "Tisa son, May and I will take care of it." Ownership builds credibility because it shows courage. Anyone can enjoy the rewards of leadership, but only true leaders embrace the burdens. Ownership also creates clarity. When a leader takes responsibility, confusion disappears, direction returns, and the team feels secure knowing someone is guiding them with intention. But responsibility is not just about owning mistakes. It is about owning outcomes. Every success and failure reflects the leader's decisions, not as blame, but as accountability. Leaders who understand this do not point fingers. They analyze situations, learn lessons, and guide their team toward improvement. This mindset transforms weakness into growth and doubt into confidence. By taking responsibility, leaders create an environment where learning is valued more than perfection. One of the greatest challenges of responsibility is leaders often stand at crossroads where every path affects many lives. The weight of these decisions cannot be taken lightly. A responsible leader evaluates options, gathers information, considers long-term consequences, and reflects deeply before choosing a direction. They accept that every decision carries risk, but avoiding decisions carries greater risk. By stepping forward with clarity, they demonstrate strength, not fear. Responsibility also means consistency. A leader cannot act responsibly only when it is convenient. They must remain steady even when circumstances become difficult. Whether the team is winning or struggling, whether times are calm or chaotic, the leader's commitment must remain firm. This consistency builds trust. People follow leaders whose words match their actions, and whose reliability does not depend on mood or pressure. Consistency makes responsibility visible. Another essential element of responsibility is discipline. Leaders cannot expect commitment from others if they themselves lack Responsibility begins with personal habits, how a leader manages time, priorities, emotions, and energy. A disciplined leader models the behavior they want to see in their team. Their example becomes a silent teacher. It shows that responsibility is not a demand placed on others, but a standard practiced within themselves. With responsibility comes emotional maturity. Leaders cannot allow anger, frustration, or insecurity to control their decisions. They must stay grounded, even when the situation becomes overwhelming. A responsible leader understands that emotional stability is not a sign of weakness, but of control. It allows them to lead with calmness, communicate with respect, and respond with wisdom. This emotional balance holds the team together during uncertainty. Responsibility also requires transparency. Leaders must be honest about expectations, changes, challenges, and outcomes. When they hide information or avoid difficult conversations, trust erodes. But when they communicate openly, even about uncomfortable truths, they strengthen the bond between themselves and their team. Transparency is a form of respect. It shows that the leader values the team enough to share the reality instead of shielding them with half. One of the most powerful aspects of responsibility is its impact on others. When a leader consistently shows responsibility, it inspires the team to do the same. People naturally rise to the level of the example they are given. A responsible leader creates responsible followers. This multiplies strength across the group. Soon, the entire team becomes a force of reliability, motivation, and collaboration. Responsibility spreads like a flame. One person lights the next. Responsibility is also deeply connected with trust. Trust is earned, not demanded, and responsibility is the currency that earns it. When leaders fulfill commitments, admit mistakes, and make decisions with integrity, trust grows naturally. Trust turns leadership from authority into influence. People do not follow because they must. They follow because they believe. This belief becomes the foundation of loyalty, teamwork, and unity. Another dimension of responsibility is foresight. Leaders must think ahead, planning not only for the present, but also for the future. They anticipate challenges, recognize opportunities, and prepare the team for what lies ahead. Foresight prevents crises and builds resilience. When leaders think long-term, they protect their team from avoidable problems and guide them towards sustainable success. Responsibility is not only about reacting wisely, but about preparing proactively. Leaders also hold the responsibility of empowering others. Leadership is not about doing everything alone. It is about helping others grow. Responsible leaders delegate not to escape work, but to develop skills in their team. They provide guidance, feedback, and support. They create opportunities for others to lead. This empowerment strengthens the entire group and ensures that leadership continues even in the leader's absence. Responsibility is fulfilled not only through action, but through empowerment. Courage is inseparable from responsibility. Leaders must make decisions that others fear, take actions that others avoid, and speak truths that others remain silent about. Responsibility demands bravery, because leadership exists at the edge of comfort. When a leader embraces responsibility with courage, they transform fear into progress. Others gain confidence simply by seeing the leader stand firm. Responsibility also requires humility. Leaders must be willing to admit when they are wrong, ask for help, and acknowledge their limitations. This humility does not weaken leadership. It strengthens it. It shows authenticity. It shows humanity. It shows that responsibility is not about perfection, but sincerity. A humble leader earns respect, not through pride, but through integrity. In moments of crisis, responsibility becomes even more crucial. Crisis reveals character. Leaders who panic create disorder. Leaders who blame others create division. But leaders who remain responsible create stability. They guide the team, provide clarity, and restore direction. In crisis, responsibility becomes the anchor that prevents the entire structure from collapsing. It turns chaos into clarity and confusion into confidence. Ultimately, responsibility is the heart of leadership. It is the silent promise a leader makes to their team, a promise to guide, protect, empower, and uplift. Responsibility is not a burden. It is a privilege. It means that others trust you enough to follow your direction, rely on your judgment, and believe in your vision. This trust is the greatest strength the leader can possess. As we move forward to the next chapter, remember that leadership begins with ambition, but survives through responsibility. Those who accept responsibility rise. Those who avoid it remain ordinary. Responsibility is not about the weight you carry. It is about the value you create. And when you lead with responsibility, you do more than guide a team. You shape a future. Chapter 7. The fire of motivation. What if the only difference between a team that barely survives and a team that rises beyond its limits is a single spark? A spark lit by the leader. Motivation is that spark. It is the invisible energy that turns ordinary effort into extraordinary achievement. Without motivation, even the most talented team becomes slow, hesitant, and uninspired. But with motivation, even an average team becomes unstoppable. This chapter explores the fire that drives human action, the emotional engine behind progress, and the role of a leader in igniting and sustaining it. Motivation begins with purpose. People do not work hard just because someone tells them to. They work hard because something inside them believes the work matters. Leaders understand this. They do not simply give tasks, they give meaning. They help people see the why behind the what. When individuals understand how their efforts contribute to something larger, they feel connected, valued, and inspired. Purpose transforms duty into passion. It turns routine into meaning, and meaning is one of the strongest motivators. Leadership and motivation are deeply connected because leaders shape the emotional climate in which people operate. A leader's attitude becomes the team's attitude. If the leader is energetic, the team feels energized. If the leader is hopeful, the team feels confident. If the leader is discouraged, the team feels defeated. Leaders are emotional mirrors. This is why motivation must begin within the leader before it reaches the team. A leader who cannot motivate themselves cannot motivate anyone else. Clarity is another core element of motivation. Unclear goals drain energy. When people do not know what they are working toward or how success will be measured, they become confused and leaders prevent this by communicating goals clearly and breaking them into achievable steps. Each small achievement becomes a source of momentum. With every step forward, people feel progress. And progress is one of the strongest psychological motivators. When individuals see themselves improving, they naturally want to continue. Recognition plays a vital role in motivation. Humans crave acknowledgement. A simple "well done" can carry more power than many realize. It validates effort, fuels confidence, and strengthens commitment. Leaders who recognize strengths, celebrate milestones, and appreciate dedication create an environment where motivation grows naturally. Recognition is not about praise for the sake of praise. It is about honoring the value someone brings to the team. It reminds them that their work matters and their presence is meaningful. Motivation also depends on challenge. A task that is too easy becomes boring. A task that is too difficult becomes overwhelming. Leaders must find the balance, a challenge that stretches the team without breaking them. When people face the right level of challenge, they experience the thrill of growth. They discover new abilities within themselves. They learn that they are capable of more than they imagined. The sense of accomplishment that follows a successful challenge becomes a source of long-lasting motivation. Emotional connection is another powerful motivator. When people feel connected to their leader and each other, they are willing to work harder, take more initiative, and push through obstacles. Leaders build this connection through empathy, listening, and genuine relationships. They create a space where people feel seen, heard, and respected. This emotional safety fuels motivation because people perform better when they feel valued. They are not just working for a task. They are working for a team, a bond, a shared purpose. Vision is essential to motivation. Leaders must paint a vivid picture of the future. A future worth striving for, a future that gives direction and excitement. Vision transforms goals into dreams and tasks into journeys. When a leader speaks with passion about what the team can accomplish, they awaken a sense of possibility. Vision motivates people not only with logic, but with emotion. It lights up the imagination and inspires action. And when the future feels hopeful, motivation becomes stronger. Motivation also requires trust. People cannot stay motivated if they do not trust their leader. Trust gives stability. It allows individuals to take risks, speak openly, and commit fully. A leader earns trust through consistency, honesty, and fairness. When people know their leader has their best interests at heart, they feel motivated to give their best in return. Trust transforms leadership from authority into influence. And influence is what truly motivates people. A leader must also understand that motivation is not one size fits. Different people are motivated by different things. Some are motivated by growth, some by recognition, some by purpose, some by stability, some by challenge. Leaders take time to learn what drives each person individually. They adapt their approach, offering personalized encouragement instead of generic inspiration. This personal understanding deepens loyalty and strengthens motivation. Motivation also requires resilience. There will be moments when the team feels tired, discouraged, or overwhelmed. This is where the leader becomes a source of emotional strength. They remind the team of how far they have come, why the goal matters, and what they are capable of overcoming. Leaders do not deny difficulties. They acknowledge them with honesty while reinforcing hope. This balance of realism and optimism keeps the motivational flame alive, even in adversity. Storytelling is another powerful tool for motivation. Humans have always been moved by stories. Stories of courage, stories of failure and comeback, stories of dreams achieved against all odds. Leaders use stories to inspire the team, to show them that where they are today is not where they must remain. Stories connect emotionally and awaken possibilities. They remind people that greatness often begins with struggle, but those who persist write their own legacy. Ownership is a strong motivator as well. When people feel ownership over their work, they commit more fully. Leaders can build this ownership by involving the team in decisions, seeking their ideas, and valuing their contributions. When individuals feel that the project belongs to them, they naturally become motivated to see it succeed. Ownership turns followers into contributors, and contributors into leaders. Motivation also thrives in a positive environment. Negativity drains energy, but positivity restores it. Leaders foster positivity by setting a respectful tone, encouraging collaboration, and resolving conflicts before they grow. A positive environment does not mean avoiding problems. It means facing them with a constructive mindset. When the atmosphere is supportive and uplifting, motivation becomes easier to maintain. Finally, motivation requires renewal. Leaders understand that motivation is not permanent. It must be refueled. They consistently check on the team's morale, provide encouragement, remind them of the mission, and celebrate progress. Motivation is like fire. If left unattended, it fades. But with the right attention, it grows brighter and stronger. In the end, motivation is not about pushing people. It is about awakening something already inside them. A leader's role is to ignite the fire, protect it, and help it burn with purpose. When a team is motivated, challenges become opportunities, obstacles become stepping stones, and limitations become breakthroughs. And when a leader masters the art of motivation, they do more than guide a team, they inspire transformation. Chapter 8: Vision and Strategy. What separates a dreamer from a leader is the ability to turn imagination into action. Vision is the blueprint. Strategy is the path that makes that vision achievable. A leader without vision drifts, and a leader without strategy struggles to reach even the nearest goal. Together, vision and strategy form the compass and the map, guiding teams through uncertainty, chaos, and obstacles towards success. This chapter explores why a clear vision inspires, why strategy ensures results, and how leaders combine both to create lasting impact. Vision begins with clarity of purpose. A leader sees beyond the present moment, imagining possibilities others cannot yet perceive. They ask not just, "What can we do?" but "What should we create?" This clarity provides direction. People follow those who can articulate a future worth striving for. Vision inspires action because it provides meaning. Without a clear picture of what lies ahead, effort can feel aimless. With vision, even the most difficult tasks gain significance. But vision alone is not enough. Without strategy, vision remains an abstract idea. Strategy converts inspiration into practical steps. A strategy identifies priorities, allocates resources, and anticipates challenges. It considers not just where the team wants to go, but how they will get there efficiently. Leaders who plan strategically provide their teams with a roadmap, ensuring that effort is focused. Progress is measurable, and mistakes are minimized. Strategy transforms lofty goals into achievable milestones. Effective vision is both ambitious and realistic. Too small a vision limits growth. Too grand a vision paralyzes action. Leaders balance imagination with practicality. They dream big enough to inspire, but design steps small enough to be This balance encourages the team to stretch without breaking. Each completed step validates the vision, reinforcing belief and building momentum. Over time, a visionary strategy turns the impossible into achievable reality. Communication of vision is critical. A leader may see the entire map clearly in their mind, but if they cannot convey it to the team, the vision remains dormant. Clear, persuasive, and repeated communication ensures that everyone understands the destination, their role in reaching it, and the impact of their contribution. Leaders use storytelling, examples, and metaphors to make abstract goals tangible. They speak in ways that spark imagination, create emotional connection, and motivate action. A strategic leader also anticipates obstacles. No path to success is free of challenges. Strategy involves identifying potential barriers, planning contingencies, and adapting as circumstances change. Flexibility within a structured plan allows leaders to navigate uncertainty. A team gains confidence when they see a leader prepared for setbacks, ready to adjust course without abandoning the ultimate vision. Strategy is not rigid. It is resilient. Vision is strengthened by purpose. People are motivated when their work contributes to something meaningful. Leaders tie their vision to values, ethics, and a higher cause. This alignment ensures that actions are consistent, decisions are principled, and commitment is sustained even in adversity. When a team believes in both the vision and the purpose behind it, they work with passion rather than obligation. Vision becomes a shared mission. A key element of strategy is prioritization. Leaders must distinguish between what is urgent and what is important. They focus effort on actions that drive progress toward the vision, avoiding distractions and low-value activities. Prioritization maximizes efficiency, prevents burnout, and maintains momentum. It teaches teams to concentrate on what matters most and to recognize that not every task contributes equally to success. Leaders also leverage the strengths of their team when executing strategy. They understand the unique skills, talents, and motivations of each member, assigning responsibilities that align with individual strengths. This strategic allocation of human resources increases productivity, improves morale, and ensures that the team works as a cohesive unit. Strategy is most effective when it aligns not only with goals, but also with people. Feedback and adaptation are critical components of strategy. No plan survives unchanged in a dynamic environment. Leaders must monitor progress, gather feedback, and adjust their approach as needed. Adaptability ensures that the vision remains achievable even as circumstances evolve. A leader who resists change risks stagnation. A leader who embraces feedback turns challenges into opportunities for refinement and growth. A compelling vision also requires courage. It may challenge conventional thinking, push boundaries, or face skepticism. Leaders must stand firm, communicate conviction, and remain confident in their direction, even when others doubt. Courage inspires confidence in the team, creating a culture of bold action and innovation. Vision without courage risks remaining an unfulfilled dream. The integration of vision and strategy fosters alignment. Each team member knows the goal, understands their role, and sees how their actions contribute to the larger picture. Alignment reduces confusion, increases efficiency, and strengthens collaboration. When vision and strategy are clearly linked, every action becomes meaningful and collective effort becomes powerful. Leaders also measure progress. A strategy without evaluation is blind. Leaders track key indicators, assess results, and celebrate milestones. Measurement ensures that the team remains on course and motivated. It also provides opportunities to learn, refine, and improve. Regular evaluation transforms effort into continuous improvement, sustaining momentum toward the ultimate vision. Finally, leaders combine vision and strategy with inspiration. Vision creates desire. Strategy creates direction, and inspiration creates energy. Leaders inspire confidence by modeling commitment, demonstrating competence, and showing belief in the team's abilities. Inspiration energizes action, ensuring that strategy is executed and vision is realized. Together, these elements form the foundation of transformative leadership. In conclusion, vision and strategy are inseparable pillars of effective leadership. Vision provides purpose, meaning, and ambition. Strategy transforms imagination into achievable results. Communication, prioritization, adaptability, courage, and inspiration strengthen their impact. Leaders who master both guide their teams confidently through uncertainty, overcome obstacles with resilience, and achieve goals that may have once seemed impossible. Vision gives direction. Strategy ensures success. Together, they create leaders who do not merely manage, but transform reality. Chapter 9. Decision-making under pressure. Imagine standing at a crossroads where every path holds consequences that could change lives forever. A momentary hesitation can turn opportunity into failure, and a reckless choice can transform potential into disaster. This is the essence of decision-making under pressure. The crucible in which leaders are forged and legacies are determined. In this chapter, we explore how effective leaders make decisions under stress, balance risk and reward, and turn uncertainty into clarity. Decision-making begins with awareness. A leader must first understand the context of a situation, recognizing the variables at play, the stakes involved, and the resources available. Awareness is not passive. It requires observation, analysis, and judgment. Leaders who act without understanding often react impulsively, relying on assumptions or incomplete information. In contrast, aware leaders see the full picture, anticipate challenges, and identify opportunities that others overlook. Awareness lays the foundation for confident choices. Pressure amplifies both risk and reward. Decisions made calmly, in theory, often feel entirely different when lives, time, or outcomes are at stake. Leaders must learn to maintain clarity amid chaos. Emotional control is critical. Fear, frustration, or panic can cloud judgment, while calm analysis allows rational, measured decisions. Leaders who develop resilience under pressure gain the ability to navigate high-stakes situations with precision and confidence, inspiring trust in those who follow them. Effective leaders rely on structured thinking. They break complex situations into smaller, manageable components, analyze options logically, and weigh potential consequences before acting. Structured thinking reduces uncertainty, ensures that critical factors are considered, and minimizes the influence of bias or emotion. It is not about removing risk entirely, that is impossible, but about making informed decisions that maximize opportunity and minimize harm. Time management is another critical element. Pressure often comes with limited time to act, forcing leaders to balance speed with accuracy. Acting too quickly can lead to mistakes. Acting too slowly can miss opportunities. Skilled leaders know when to act decisively and when to gather additional information. They prioritize what must be decided immediately versus what can wait, ensuring that urgency does not compromise quality. Risk assessment is inseparable from decision-making under pressure. Leaders must identify potential downsides, anticipate worst-case scenarios, and weigh them against potential gains. Risk assessment is not about avoiding risk altogether. Risk is inherent in leadership, but about making calculated decisions that balance boldness with prudence. Courageous leaders accept uncertainty while taking responsibility for outcomes, transforming fear into actionable steps. Decision-making also depends on adaptability. Conditions can change rapidly, and rigid plans often fail under pressure. Leaders must be prepared to revise strategies, adjust priorities, and pivot when necessary. Flexibility allows them to respond effectively to unforeseen developments while keeping their ultimate goals in focus. Adaptable leaders do not view change as failure. They see it as information and opportunity. A key component of effective decision-making is consultation. While leaders ultimately bear responsibility, gathering insights from trusted team members improves outcomes. Different perspectives reveal blind spots, challenge assumptions, and generate creative solutions. Consultation is not about diffusing responsibility, but about enriching it. Leaders who listen carefully and integrate input make more informed, balanced choices under pressure. Intuition also plays a role. Experienced leaders often rely on a combination of analysis and instinct when decisions cannot wait for complete information. Intuition is informed by knowledge, experience, and pattern recognition. It allows leaders to act decisively when the clock is ticking, while intuition alone is not sufficient. When coupled with analysis, it becomes a powerful tool for navigating complexity. Leaders must also embrace accountability. Every decision under pressure carries consequences, and leaders cannot hide behind excuses or shift blame. Accepting responsibility strengthens credibility and builds trust. Teams follow leaders who own their choices, even when outcomes are unfavorable. Accountability reinforces discipline, encourages careful thinking, and ensures that decisions are made with integrity and courage. Communication during decision-making is critical. When choices are made under pressure, a leader must clearly articulate the rationale, direction, and expectations to the team. Uncertainty breeds confusion and hesitation, while transparent communication fosters confidence and alignment. Leaders who explain decisions inspire trust, ensure coordinated action, and reduce the chaos that pressure naturally amplifies. Decision-making under pressure also requires resilience in the face of mistakes. No leader, no matter how skilled, is immune to error. The true test lies not in avoiding mistakes, but in responding to them effectively. Leaders must learn from errors, adjust plans, and continue moving forward with clarity and confidence. Mistakes become lessons, and pressure becomes a training ground for future success. Ethics and values guide decision-making under pressure. When stakes are high, shortcuts, compromises, or unethical choices may seem tempting. Yet leaders who prioritize integrity maintain long-term credibility and trust. Ethical decision-making under pressure demonstrates character, reinforces team culture, and ensures that success is sustainable rather than hollow. Leadership is not just about results. It is about how those results are achieved. Stress management is crucial. Pressure can distort thinking, elevate emotions, and reduce focus. Leaders who practice stress management through preparation, mental clarity, reflection, and self-care maintain cognitive sharpness, emotional stability, and decision-making effectiveness. They model calm and resilience for their teams, creating an environment where pressure does not paralyze action. Finally, decision-making under pressure is about balance, balancing analysis with instinct, urgency with patience, risk with opportunity, and individual judgment with consultation. Leaders navigate complexity not by eliminating uncertainty, but by embracing it, using it to guide thoughtful, informed, and courageous choices. Pressure becomes a lens through which priorities are clarified, strengths are revealed, and leadership is defined. In conclusion, leadership is tested not in comfort, but in moments of high stakes. Decision-making under pressure transforms potential into action, fear into courage, and uncertainty into clarity. Leaders who master this skill guide their teams effectively, inspire trust, and achieve outcomes that others might consider impossible. Pressure is inevitable. Excellence under pressure is a choice. Chapter 10. The Rise of Numenor's Shadow. A single choice can change the fate of an entire civilization. Numenor, once the greatest gift ever granted to mortal men, now stood at a crossroads between gratitude and greed. Its towers still gleamed like polished silver. Its ships ruled the waves, and its people lived longer than any other race of men. Yet beneath this brilliance, a quiet darkness had begun to grow. This chapter explores how the seeds of pride, fear, and ambition slowly transformed a blessed kingdom into a realm destined for tragedy. Numenor's early years were shaped by wisdom. The Edain, rewarded for their loyalty in the wars against Mordor, built a kingdom dedicated to peace, learning, and harmony with the Valar. They cultivated fields with care, raised cities with beauty, and studied crafts with unmatched excellence. Their hearts were full of hope. Their rulers were noble and just. For centuries, Numenor was a symbol of what humanity could achieve when guided by humility and respect for higher powers. But with prosperity came a subtle shift, a hunger for more. The first shadow appeared in the hearts of those who questioned the gift of men mortality. Though their lifespans were long and blessed, the Numenorians envied the immortality of the elves. What the Valar saw as a gift, the freedom to leave the world when their time had come, the men of Numenor began to view as a punishment. Fear of death took root, first as a whisper, then as a collective unrest. They began to ask why they could not be like the firstborn, why their days must end while others lived eternally beneath the unchanging stars. As fear deepened, so did pride. The Numenorians' skill in shipbuilding and navigation allowed them to sail farther than any mortal people before them. They reached Middle-earth and were welcomed as allies by many. Their presence brought knowledge, healing, and hope at first. But over time, admiration turned to arrogance. They felt they were superior to all other men, destined to rule rather than to guide. Their ships returned home laden with treasures, and with every voyage, their hunger for power increased. The Valar watched with concern. They loved the Numenorians and wished to preserve their peace. To protect them from temptation, they established the ban of the Valar forbidding Numenorian ships from sailing westward toward Aman. This decree was not meant as punishment but as protection, for the Blessed Realm was not meant for mortals. Yet the ban stirred resentment. The people of Numenor, especially those with restless hearts, felt restrained, caged, denied the paradise they believed they deserved. This tension divided Numenor into two factions. On one side were the faithful, those who honored the Valar, trusted their wisdom, and maintained friendship with the elves. On the other side rose the king's men, ambitious, proud, and increasingly hostile toward the immortals, who, in their eyes, denied them eternal life. The once unified kingdom began to fracture, not through war, but through ideology. The faithful remained loyal to tradition, while the king's men grew louder in their demands for immortality. Amid this turmoil, Numenor's kings played a decisive role. Early rulers remained loyal to the Valar, guiding their people with wisdom and restraint. But as generations passed, fear of death became more potent among Numenor's leaders. Some kings attempted to extend their reigns, clinging to life through any means available. Their hearts, once filled with reverence, slowly hardened. Pride replaced humility, and suspicion replaced trust. The kings began distancing themselves from the elves, whose presence reminded them of what they could never attain. Darkness often enters not with thunder but with a whisper, and the whisper came in the form of Sauron. Though defeated in the War of Wrath, he had not been destroyed. In Middle-earth, he rebuilt his power slowly, cunningly, waiting for the right moment to strike. He watched Numenor's growing pride with interest, sensing opportunity. Though he feared the might of Numenorian armies, he understood human weakness better than any other foe. Pride, fear, ambition. These were the tools he would use. In time, Numenor's naval power grew so immense that its fleets dominated every sea. The king's men, thirsty for conquest, established colonies along Middle-earth's coasts. They demanded tribute, seized land, and imposed their rule. Their hearts hardened further, and humility was forgotten. The faithful watched with sorrow as their beloved kingdom drifted toward tyranny. Yet within Numenor's darkest hour, small lights still shone. Families like the House of Amandal and Elendil upheld the ancient values of honor, respect, and wisdom. They saw that Numenor's strength did not lie in conquest, but in balance between mortal ambition and divine guidance. They warned the people of the dangers of pride, but their voices were drowned out by the louder cries for power and immortality. As pressure increased, the kings sought ways to overcome mortality. They searched ancient lore, questioned the elves, and even probed forbidden knowledge. The more they sought to escape death, the more obsessed they became with avoiding it. Death, once accepted, became the kingdom's greatest enemy, and fear, once small, now clouded the minds of many. The tension eventually reached the breaking point. The king's men openly rejected the Valar, turning instead to idols and false hopes. They built monuments to themselves, celebrated their might, and suppressed the faithful. Their arrogance grew so great that they believed no power could challenge them. not even the Valar themselves. This pride, unchecked and unchallenged, marked the beginning of Numenor's irreversible decline. Yet the tragedy of Numenor is not merely a tale of downfall. It is a lesson in the dangers of forgetting one's origins. The kingdom had been founded on gratitude and humility, but these virtues were replaced by fear and ambition. Death, once understood as a natural part of life, became a threat to be conquered at any cost. And in their desire for immortality, the Numenorians abandoned the very values that had allowed them to flourish. In this chapter, Numenor's rise is not just a history lesson. It is a reflection on human nature. When success leads to arrogance, when fear overshadows wisdom, and when ambition overwhelms responsibility, even the greatest kingdoms can fall. The shadow over Numenor did not appear suddenly. It grew slowly, carefully, silently. It began in the heart, long before it appeared in the world. The story now moves toward the moment when Sauron enters Numenor itself, a turning point that will shape the fate of Middle-earth forever. Chapter 11. Menus, Sauron Numenor. The corruption of a golden kingdom. Sometimes a kingdom does not fall by the sword. It falls by opening its gates to the very enemy it fears. Numenor, proud and powerful, believed no force in Middle-earth could challenge its might. Yet the greatest danger it would ever face was not a vast army or a monstrous creature. It was a single voice, soft, charming, brilliant, and poisonous. This is the chapter where the Golden Kingdom lets in its darkest guest. The rise of Numenor's arrogance had already created cracks in its foundations. Generations of kings had drifted away from the Valar, fearing death and longing for eternal life. Pride had hardened into entitlement, and entitlement into hostility. Sauron, watching from Middle-earth, knew these cracks were all he needed. Where swords failed, whispers would succeed. He understood human weakness, particularly the weakness of those who believed themselves invincible. The moment came during the reign of Heroism, the most powerful and proud king Numenor had ever known. His ambition was unmatched. He believed his kingdom's armies were unstoppable. When he learned that Sauron claimed dominion over Middle-earth and called himself King of Men, Ar-Pharazôn saw it as an insult. He could not tolerate anyone challenging his supremacy. He launched a massive naval expedition, the greatest fleet ever built, to capture Sauron and bring him to Numenor. When the Numenorian ships arrived on Middle-earth's shores, the very land trembled beneath their weight. Sauron, though mighty, understood he could not win through force. But he did not need to. Instead of fighting, he knelt before Ar-Pharazôn and surrendered. It was not defeat, it was strategy. For Sauron knew that inside Numenor, with its deepening pride and fear, he could do far more damage than on any battlefield. His arrival in Numenor shocked the kingdom. Many believed the king had proven his might. Others, particularly the faithful, felt dread. They knew Sauron's nature, cunning, persuasive, capable of twisting truth into lies and lies into irresistible promises. But their warnings were ignored. Ar-Pharazôn saw Sauron as a conquered enemy, a trophy of his victory. He did not notice the subtle confidence in Sauron's eyes, or the quiet smile that suggested he had already won. Sauron began his work with patience and precision. He studied the fears and desires of Numenorians and used them to his advantage. He flattered the king, praising his strength, his wisdom, his destiny. He whispered of power beyond imagination. He spoke of secrets the Valar hid from men. His most dangerous weapon was his understanding of mortality. He knew the Numenorians feared death, and he promised escape. He told them the Valar had deceived them. He told them immortality belonged not only to the elves. He told them that men, too, were meant to live forever, and that the only thing standing between them and eternity was a simple act of courage to seize what they deserved. Ar-Pharazôn, already threatened by the idea of death, listened, and slowly he became Sauron's greatest ally. Under Sauron's influence, Numenor changed rapidly. The king began distancing himself from the faithful, suspecting them of disloyalty. Ancient traditions honoring the Valar were abandoned. The elves stopped coming to Numenor, for the king no longer welcomed them. The once bright island grew darker, not by shadow, but by spirit. Its people became restless, fearful, hungry for promises of eternal life. Sauron's greatest achievement was convincing Eärférazin that he could defy the Valar themselves. He introduced the worship of Morgoth, claiming the fallen Dark Lord could grant immortality. Temples were built, sacrifices were made, and the air of the sacred island grew heavy with corruption. Numenor, once the greatest realm of men, now served the darkness it had once fought so bravely against. Yet hope was not lost. The faithful, led by Amandel and his son Elendil, refused to bow to Sauron's lies. They remembered the old ways, the promises of and the friendship of the elves. They saw how far their people had fallen, and how dangerously the king was being manipulated. They continued to resist quietly, protecting what little light remained in the kingdom. But they were watched. Sauron ensured that any who opposed him faced punishment, exile, or death. As Sauron grew more powerful, Numenorian society began to split beyond repair. The king's men followed Sauron with unquestioning loyalty, giving in to fear and pride. The faithful held on to hope, but lived under increasing pressure. Every year, the shadow grew longer, and the king grew older, a reminder of the one thing Sauron used best: fear of death. Eärférazin became obsessed. He wanted immortality. He wanted to claim the fate of the elves. He wanted to rule forever. Sauron fed this obsession, telling him he could live eternally in the Blessed Realm if only he dared to take it. The king, blinded by ambition, prepared for the greatest act of defiance in history. An invasion of Aman the Valar watched but did not intervene yet. Their grief was heavy, for they had loved Numenor since its creation, but Numenor had chosen its own path, drawn not by oppression, but by pride and fear. Sauron's corruption was complete. The Golden Kingdom was now a vessel of darkness. The tragedy of this chapter lies not in the destruction that is coming, but in the choices that made it possible. Numenor invited the enemy, listened to his lies, and abandoned its own wisdom. Sauron did not conquer by force. He conquered by understanding the deepest weakness of the human heart. And now, the stage is set for the great downfall, a catastrophe that will reach Middle-earth and create the kingdoms that rise from Numenor's ashes. Chapter 12. The Downfall of Numenor. Sometimes destruction begins with a single step, not forward, but upward, toward a place one was never meant to reach. Numenor's final tragedy began the moment its king believed he could conquer death by setting foot on forbidden shores. This chapter tells the story of a proud empire that dared to challenge the divine, a kingdom whose brilliance blinded it to the danger of its own ambition. The seeds of Numenor's downfall had already taken deep root. Sauron's whispers had reshaped the kingdom's soul, turning fear into hatred and pride into rebellion. The king, Eärférazin, once noble, was now consumed by a single desire: immortality. He believed that the Valar guarded it for themselves and denied it to men out of jealousy. Sauron fed these thoughts, promising that the reward of eternal life awaited only the brave, those willing to seize it. Numenor, once a realm of harmony, began preparing for war, not against any mortal foe, but against the gods themselves. The island echoed with the sound of armored soldiers, the forging of weapons, and the construction of the largest fleet the world had ever seen. The king's men, swollen with pride and hatred, followed Eärférazin eagerly. They believed they were destined to rule not just Middle-earth, but all existence. Meanwhile, the faithful watched in sorrow. They knew the Valar were not tyrants, but guardians. They understood that mortality was not a curse, but a gift, the gift of peace beyond the world's limits. But their voices could no longer reach the king, whose heart was locked shut by fear. Their only hope was to escape before the final disaster. Amandale, leader of the faithful, made a desperate plan. He decided to sail alone into the west, to plead with the Valar for mercy. It was a perilous journey, forbidden by the very ban that Numenor was now preparing to break. Yet he believed it was the only chance to save his people. Amandel left secretly, carrying with him the last remnants of Numenor's ancient loyalty. His journey ended in silence. No one ever learned his fate, but his son, Elendil, and grandsons Isildur and Anarion prepared the faithful to flee when the storm arrived. As the great fleet took shape, Numenor's skies grew darker. Clouds gathered unnaturally. Thunder rolled even on clear days, and the sea trembled as if warning of what was to come. But Ar-Pharazôn saw these signs not as warnings, but as challenges. The king stood on his golden ship, the largest of all, believing he was destined to reshape the world. Behind him stretched 1,000 vessels, filled with warriors blinded by ambition. Sauron watched it all with quiet satisfaction. He knew what was coming. He had guided Numenor to the edge of destruction, and now he waited for them to leap. Though he remained behind in the king's temple, he felt no fear. He believed himself immortal, unable to be touched by the doom that would fall upon men. His only concern was the faithful, and he ensured they were hunted relentlessly. But fate was already moving in their favor. The day came when the fleet set sail. It was a sight unmatched in the history of Middle-earth. Sails like storm clouds, masts like forests, and hulls gleaming with the wealth of centuries. The sea groaned under the weight of pride. As the ships pushed westward, the ban of the Valar was broken, a line drawn not on maps, but in the fabric of the world. When the fleet reached the shores of Aemon, the king believed he had succeeded. No storm struck them, no army met them. The blessed realm lay peaceful and untouched. Ar-Pharazôn stepped ashore with triumph in his heart, convinced that immortality was within his grasp. But this silence was not victory. It was the stillness before judgment. In Tadmomenda, Valar laid down their guardianship. They appealed directly to Eru, the one who alone had authority over the fate of the world. And Eru answered. The world trembled, as if wounded. The sky shattered with lightning. The sea rose in towering walls. The land beneath Numenor cracked open, swallowing cities whole. The island that had once been a paradise was torn apart by the wrath of the divine. Mountains split, rivers vanished, and the great temple Sauron had built collapsed in flames. The fleet, still on the shores of Aman, was crushed beneath a wave so vast that no tale could fully describe it. Ar-Pharazôn and his warriors were buried alive beneath falling mountains, trapped in timeless darkness until the end of days. Sauron too was struck down. His physical body was destroyed, burned away by the firestorm that consumed Numenor. Yet his spirit, though weakened, fled back to Middle. Never again could he take a fair form. His beauty was forever lost. He became a creature of hatred and shadow, yet still powerful enough to bring future wars. As Numenor sank into the sea, its final screams drowned beneath the roaring waves. The once grand island vanished, leaving only scattered memories and legends behind. But amidst the ruin, a small hope survived. The ships of the faithful, led by Elendil Isildur and Anarion, were lifted by the storm but not destroyed. Guided by grace, they were carried eastward across the reshaped seas. When the world grew calm again, they found themselves upon the shores of Middle. There, among new lands, they built the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor. These realms carried the last light of Numenor, its wisdom, its honor, and its resilience. The faithful remembered what the King's men had forgotten. The true strength lies not in conquering death, but in living with purpose. The downfall of Numenor became one of the greatest tragedies in the history of Arda, not because it was sudden, but because it was preventable. It was the story of a kingdom that lost its way, of a people who forgot their origins, and of a king who believed he could challenge the divine. And yet, it was also the beginning of a new chapter 1 that would shape the War of the Ring, the rise of new heroes, and the final fate of Sauron himself. Chapter 13. The Faithful Reborn. The founding of Arnor and Gondor. Sometimes the end of one world becomes the beginning of another. When Numenor fell beneath the roaring sea, it looked as though everything had been lost: its people, its glory, its history. But from the wreckage of that tragedy rose a small group of survivors who refused to let the light of their homeland die. This chapter is the story of how the faithful, broken but alive, transformed grief into strength and built new kingdoms that would change the fate of Middle-earth forever. When the violent storm lifted Elendil and his son's ships across the newly reshaped seas, they were not triumphant heroes. They were refugees. Behind them, the land of their ancestors had vanished forever. They had lost their homes, their friends, their king, their history. Yet, within their hearts burned a powerful truth: Numenor had ended, because it had forgotten humility and reverence. They would not repeat that mistake. Elendel's fleet was scattered by the storm, but fate guided them safely. Elendil himself landed far in the north of Middle-earth, on long, wild shores washed by cold winds. His sons Isildur and Anarion landed farther south, near great rivers and fertile plains. These regions would soon become the foundation for two new realms, not built in arrogance, but in remembrance. Elendel's landing marked the birth of the northern kingdom, Arnor. The land was wide, quiet, and rich with ancient forests. Its hills carried memories of the First Age, and its plains awaited the footsteps of a new people. Elendil and his followers built their first city, Unminas, by the shores of Lake. Unlike the towering, proud structures of Numenor, Unminas was shaped with humility and harmony. It combined the wisdom of the Dunedain with the beauty they had learned from the elves. The elves of Lindon, led by Gil-galad, welcomed Elendil with open arms. They knew of Numenor's downfall, and their grief matched his. But they also recognized the strength of the faithful, those who had never abandoned the friendship between elves and men. Through this alliance, Arnor grew not only in size, but also in spirit. Its people studied lore, crafted weapons, and prepared for a future in which the shadow of Sauron would rise again. Meanwhile, in the south, Isildur and Anarion built the kingdom of Gold. The land was fertile and beautiful, framed by great rivers Anduin most of all, and guarded by mountains that reached into the sky. Gondor's foundations were stronger than stone. They were built upon memory and determination. Two great cities rose in this land. The first was Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Rising Moon, built near the eastern mountains. It shone with silver light at night and became the home of Isildur's line. The second was Minas Anor, the Tower of the Setting Sun, built in the west where Anarion ruled. Between them stood Aziliath, a marvel of stone and water, a city of bridges and domes stretching across the great river. It was the capital of Gondor, a symbol of unity and hope. The survivors of Numenor brought many gifts with them, not only in memory, but in craft. They still had their long lifespans, their skill in building, and their knowledge of ancient lore. They planted the White Tree, a sapling Isildur had rescued from Numenor before its downfall. This tree became the heart of their new kingdom, a living reminder of their lost home and their unbroken loyalty to the old ways. But even as Gondor and Arnor flourished, the shadow of Sauron began to stir in the east. Though his body had been destroyed in Numenor's downfall, his spirit had fled back to Mordor. There, in the dark land he had shaped long ago, he began rebuilding his strength. The faithful knew he would return, and this time he would not hide behind deception. He would return with fire and war. Elendil and his sons understood this threat clearly. Numenor had fallen because many had been blinded by lies, but the new realms would stand firm because they were built on truth, humility, and friendship with the free peoples. They forged alliances with the elves, especially with Gil-galad, High King of the North. Together, they prepared for the inevitable confrontation with Sauron. But preparation did not mean fear. Arnor and Gondor began to prosper. People rebuilt their lives. Children were born who would never see Numenor but would carry its legacy in their blood. Farms flourished, cities expanded, ships explored new coasts, and hope, for the first time in many generations, returned to the hearts of men. Yet hope was accompanied by responsibility. Elendil often stood upon the northern hills, looking at the stars, remembering the words of his father Amandil and the old wisdom of Nap. He knew that leadership was not about domination, but stewardship. The strength to guide without pride, the courage to stand against darkness without becoming darkness. Isildur and Anarion shared this wisdom. Their rule in Gondor was marked not by tyranny, but by justice. They built roads, established laws, protected trade routes, and welcomed the diverse peoples of Middle-earth into their realm. Their leadership reflected the best of Numenor, not the version corrupted by Sauron, but the version blessed by the Valar in the early days. Still, the shadow grew. Sauron rebuilt Boromir, Gathering, orcs, trolls, and twisted creatures to serve him. His hatred for the faithful burned brighter than ever. They had survived the catastrophe he helped create. They had built kingdoms where his darkness could not reach. He swore to crush them and reclaim dominion over men. Elend, wise and far-sighted, knew that the time of open war was approaching. He remained united with his sons through the ancient seeing stones they had brought from Namanor Thepalantiri. These stones allowed the three rulers to communicate across great distances, strengthening their alliance and preparing them for what would soon become the greatest war of the Second Age. But before that war could come, this chapter stands as a reminder of resilience. The faithful did not merely survive the destruction of their homeland, they transformed their survival into a new beginning. They refused to surrender to despair, refused to repeat the mistakes of the king's men, and refused to abandon their hope. The founding of Arnor and Gondor marks the rebirth of Namenora's legacy. From tragedy emerged strength, from loss emerged determination, from ruin emerged to kingdoms that would one day play a crucial role in the defeat of Sauron and the shaping of Middle-earth's future. The story now moves toward the rising storm, the forging of alliances, the march of armies, and the final confrontation between the last alliance of Elves and Men and the Dark Lord of Mordor. Chapter 14. The Siege of Angband. After long years of struggle, the Noldor finally settled in Beleriand, each prince choosing a land to rule and protect, though their hearts still burned with grief and anger. Toward Morgoth, they understood that a direct assault on Angband could not yet succeed. Morgoth was strong, hidden deep within iron fortresses and surrounded by endless armies of orcs and dark creatures. So the Noldor made a new plan to surround evil itself. The princes and their people built strongholds across the northern borders, forming a great defensive ring. This was later known as the Siege of Angband, a long, watchful barrier meant to contain Morgoth's power. Though it was not a complete victory, it gave the elves a time of peace and hope. Medros guarded the east, standing high upon Himring, a cold and windy hill that never fell to snow. He was quiet, wise, and stronger after his suffering in Morgoth's captivity. From this fortress he watched the plains, knowing the enemy would someday test their strength again. Maglar, the singer, held the lands along a long, curved shore. His people built small harbors and lived close to the sea, though he never again sang with the joy he once had. His songs now carried memories of loss, the oath, the kinslaying, and the long road of exile. To the west, Celegorm and Curufin kept the mountain passes, fierce and proud, building hidden pathways for scouts and hunters. Caranthar, cold-tempered but clever, ruled in the lands near the dwarves of the Blue Mountains. Though they trusted each other little at first, trade and alliance soon grew. Finrod Felagund built Nargothrond, a secret underground kingdom inspired by dwarven craft. With its deep halls and guarded gates, it became a safe refuge for many people. Keen Fingolfin, noble and unbroken, protected the central plains of Argalan. His riders stood as a symbol of courage. For almost 400 years, the Noldor kept Morgoth contained. His orcs rarely escaped, and when they did, the Noldor swiftly hunted them down. It was a time of growth, of cities rising, alliances forming, a new generations born beneath starlight. But peace was never complete. Dark clouds still gathered in the far north, and the elves knew that Morgoth, the dark enemy of the world, was waiting, watching, preparing, for he was not one to remain silent forever. Though the siege seemed strong, it was not absolute. Beneath Angband, Morgoth worked tirelessly, sending spies, breeding darker creatures, and gathering shadows. The Noldor believed their watch could last forever, but deep inside, many felt a quiet fear that one day the storm they held back would burst forth with a power greater than any they had faced. And when that day came, the world would tremble. Chapter 16. The final turning of fate. Every great story reaches a moment when silence breaks, shadows rise, and the choices of many years gather into one unstoppable wave. For Beleriand, that moment arrived quietly, not with thunder, but with the first faint tremor of destiny moving underground. Peace had lasted long enough. The Noldor had built kingdoms, friendships, and dreams across the wide lands of Middle-earth. But now those dreams stood on the edge of fire. This chapter marks the turning of the world, the beginning of the end. For many years, the siege of Angband had held strong. Watchfires burned on the northern hills. Warriors trained unceasingly, and the great lords of the Noldor believed their vigilance could hold Morgoth forever. Yet deep inside Angband, the dark enemy waited with patience, older than the mountains. His hatred grew like molten stone, gathering power, ready to break the chains that held him. Across the Freelands, life continued in a blend of hope and caution. Fingolfin ruled Hithlum with steady justice. His people were proud and disciplined, their hearts bound to their king not by fear, but by love. Under his leadership, the Noldor had become a wall of courage around Mythic. In the Sut, Nargothrond flourished under Finrod. Its halls glowed with torchlight and golden carvings. Songs filled the chambers, telling stories of hope, sacrifice, and the unbroken loyalty between Felagund and his allies. The kings of the Noldor met often, sharing counsel, strengthening alliances, and preparing for the unknown. Yet beneath this unity, cracks began to spread. The oath of Fëanor still weighed heavily on his sons. Though they guarded the east with unmatched discipline, their hearts burned with restless fire. Medroth fought to guide his brothers toward Raisin, but even he could not silence the whisper of the oath, a whisper that promised doom if they did not reclaim the Silmarils. In Doriath, King Thingol watched the Noldor with wary eyes. The kinslaying at Alquaelandu had left a wound that time could not heal. Though he allowed trade and conversation, he never fully trusted the exiles. The Sindar held to their ancient ways, and the girdle of Melian protected Doriath like a silent warning. Meanwhile, Turgon wandered through dreams and visions. The sea winds of Nevrast whispered to him of a hidden future, a secret kingdom untouched by shadow. Guided by Olmo, he quietly prepared for a new beginning, one that even his closest kin did not yet understand. In his heart, he knew the world would soon break, and only a hidden refuge could survive the storm that approached. While the Noldor planned and built, Morgoth unleashed the first sign of his return, rivers of fire bursting from the earth. In an instant, the siege of Angband, which had held for nearly 400 years, shattered. Mountains split, flames devoured forests. The sky burned red like falling embers. The rivers hissed and boiled, carrying black smoke that curled across the plains. This was the Dagor Bragollach, the battle of sudden flame. The Noldor were unprepared. Their watchtowers collapsed under the heat. Their armies stumbled into chaos. Creatures of Morgoth, twisted and merciless, poured out of the smoking lands like a plague. Balrogs leaped across the fire, their whips cracking like thunder. Wolves and dragons roared as the firestorm swept across the north. In Hithlum, Fingolfin held his ground. His people stood around him like shields, fighting with unmatched courage. The king moved like lightning, his presence alone turning despair into resolve. Yet even he sensed the truth. The world had changed. In the east, Medros fought valiantly, but was over. Himring alone survived, but the surrounding lands were consumed by flame and darkness. Caranthor's realm collapsed. Celagorm and Carefin abandoned their lands, retreating southward. The great front of the Noldor, once strong and unbroken, fractured into isolated fragments. In the south, Finrod Felagund barely escaped the flames, saved only by the loyalty of his guards. Nargothrond held firm, but the roads leading to it lay ruined, cut off from allies and surrounded by new dangers. The shadow of war covered all the Freelands. The arrival of men added both hope and sorrow. Some fought bravely beside the Noldor. Others, terrified or tempted by Morgoth's promises, betrayed the alliances that had barely begun. The fate of their kind shifted like unsteady ground beneath a rising storm. Across Beleriand, the once quiet years of peace melted away. Every kingdom felt the weight of change. Every leader sensed the coming collapse. The world stood at the edge of a long night. Yet even in disaster, Fingolfin, hearing of the defeat of his people and the ruin of the siege, was consumed by grief and righteous fury. He rode alone to the gates of Angband, challenging Morgoth himself. What followed became one of the greatest legends in the duel of the High King against the Dark Enemy. Though Fingolfin's strength was not enough to defeat Morgoth completely, his bravery burned like a star. His sacrifice echoed across the ages, a reminder that even in the darkest hour, honor can stand against evil. With Fingolfin's fall, leadership passed to his noble son Fingon. The Noldor gathered what strength remained, rebuilding shattered defenses and tending to the wounded. But everyone knew the truth. The world had changed forever. The great question now stood before them. Would they rise again, or would the shadow sweep over all? This was the beginning of the long sorrow, the start of the final struggle that would eventually determine the fate of the elves, the fate of men, and the fate of the Silmarils themselves. And so the chapter ends, not with closure, but with a doorway opening into the last battles of the First Age. Destiny had awakened. The world had shifted. The final arc of the Silmarillion had begun. Chapter 1-5. The Noldor in Beleriand. As the long years passed under the siege of Angbon, the Noldor shaped their lives in Beleriand with strength, wisdom, and unbroken determination. Each kingdom grew in its own way, forming a great tapestry of elven culture, courage, and rivalry. Though united against Morgoth, their families carried old wounds, pride, jealousy, oaths, and memories of exile. Yet from these mixed emotions rose new wonders, grand halls, deep friendships, and alliances that changed the fate of Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, ruled from Hitham, a land of strong winds and cold lakes. His people loved him deeply, for he was noble and fair, a warrior whose courage shone even in the darkest times. Under his leadership, Hithlum became a place of discipline and honor, a shield between Morgoth and the free lands. His son, Fingon the Valiant, guarded the highlands near the northern borders, brave, compassionate, and fierce in battle. He became a legend among both elves and men. The Noldor often said that if hope had a heartbeat, it lived in Fingon. To the Suturgon, settled in Navrast, a quiet coastal land filled with sea wines and hidden beaches. He was thoughtful and foresightful, guided often by dreams and whispers of destiny. For though Navrasta was calm, Turgon felt called toward something greater. A secret city, a place of refuge that would remain hidden from Morgoth's shadow. Finrod Felogund ruled Nargothrond, the great underground fortress beside the river Nerog. He was wise, kind, and beloved by many. His friendship with the dwarves deepened, and he shared with them a mutual respect rare in Middle. Under his gentle rule, Nargothrond became a place of music, learning, and secret strength. The sons of Fëanor held the eastern territories. Their realms were strong, but their hearts remained troubled by the weight of the terrible oath. Though they fought bravely against the fire of their vow often blinded them. Medros stood upon Himring, ever watchful, the most noble and steady of his brothers. Maglar ruled the coastlands, his sorrowful songs echoing across the waves. Celegorm and Curufin built secret paths and strongholds in the forests. Caranthor, proud and sharp-tempered, grew wealthy through trade with the dwarves, though his trust came slowly. Despite their flaws, they held their lands with iron discipline, forming the longest and hardest part of the siege. Across the western valleys lay the Sindar, the grey elves, who had long lived under King Thingol of Doriath. Their ways were older and more subtle, shaped by ages before the Noldor returned. At first, mistrust simmered between the two peoples, especially when Thingol learned of the Efurbade Kenya, the high speech of the North within his realm, a decision that would echo through the coming ages. Yet friendships grew nonetheless. Some Noldor married among the Sindar, some worked side by side, some learned each other's music and craft. Slowly, carefully, the two great elven cultures wove together. But beneath this beauty, danger still stirred. Morgoth watched from Angband, biding his time. He feared not only the strength of the Noldor, but also the unity forming between elves and the newly arrived race of men, the children of the sun. 4 men brought something new, a freedom of choice, a destiny not written by the Valar. Though the Noldor did not yet see it, the arrival of men would eventually shape the fate of every kingdom in Beleriand. For now, the world seemed steady, guarded, hopeful, growing stronger. But all knew the peace could not last forever. The siege held, but shadows moved beneath it. And in the far north, Morgoth prepared the first strike of a war that would change everything.